Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of No Credits Needed. This is season 4, episode 7. Oh boy, are we moving along fast. I think after this one, we only have 3 more episodes left. So if you've been sticking along for the whole season, thank you guys so much. For any new listeners, welcome. This is a podcast about creativity where I interview a bunch of different creative people and we talk about their creative process, their creative journey, and what they did to get to where they are today. And generally, we try to walk away with a little bit of life advice, some creative advice for ourselves as well. So, welcome. As always, I want to encourage you guys to visit nocreditsneeded.com. That's where you guys can see the latest audio version, the latest video version of the podcast. And since we're on that topic, I also don't want to forget to remind you guys to review the podcast. Like if you guys have been listening for a while, but you still haven't reviewed either on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or I think Google Podcasts allows you to review as well. Anywhere that you can review or leave a comment if you're on the YouTube. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment, subscribe, like, all that stuff. It just in general helps the podcast reach more people. So I would appreciate that. Thank you. I usually like to start each episode giving you guys a little bit of insight as to what I'm doing creatively. Last week, I let you guys in that I had a couple pitches going on. I had to write a few scripts. Unfortunately, I was not picked for the film club script. But like I said in the last episode, even if I didn't get picked, I'm still really excited to work on the pitch that was picked, and I'll keep you guys updated on how that moves along throughout the semester. But if you remember, there's also another pitch that I'm involved in for my class specifically, where we're going to pick 2 short films that we're going to make, and I still have a possibility to get picked there. So hopefully we get picked. And again, if I don't, so be it. I'm still going to be excited to work on someone else's project. And that's really all I got going on creatively this week. So that means that was a super short update, which means we can get into our guest for this week a lot quicker. The guest we have this week is a bassist for an indie rock band, and he's also an academic advisor. His name is Sal Pisciotta. Sal's the bassist for an indie rock band called Cloud Tapes. Their most recent EP is called Seasons Past, and oh boy, is it a good one. It's a really, really good EP. I think it's 4 or 5 songs on it. I can't quite remember. But my favorite song on it, like I really recommend you guys go listen to it. My favorite song is Hollow off of that EP. It's really good. And that EP got me hooked on this band. I went and looked up their previous albums. Every album sounds slightly different. I know Sal and I talk about it in the episode. There have been some changes in the band and some new sounds are coming out. And I'm excited to see where the band goes from here. So naturally, Sal and I talk about music for a big chunk of this episode, but we also get into his academic advising and how that influences his art and how his art influences his academic advising. It's really interesting to see how he meshes those 2 things together. With all that being said, I'm excited for you guys to listen to this interview with Sal. He's the nicest guy ever. In fact, this episode was really close to not being recorded because I fucked up and I gave Sal the wrong time in the wrong time zone. And he was online like an hour or 2 before I thought we were recording. And it was a huge miscommunication. I felt super bad, but Sal was so nice about it. He said, chill, don't worry about it. We got it. And we were able to sit down and have a great conversation. And I'm excited for you guys to listen to it. So without any further ado, this is Sal Pisciotta. So let's start off first with the music. So you have the band. I believe you're the bassist of the band. Is that right?
That's right, Cloud Tapes. We've been together. It's been a couple years now. I think the seeds of this band probably started around 2014 or so. And my last band was sort of kind of going its separate ways, and
Hmm.
you know, singer was from a kind of the same scene we were playing in, so we kind of overlapped there.
Got it. Okay. So did you start the band off, or did you join the band like a little bit later in its life?
So this band was actually me and the singer songwriter guitar player. We kind of got together at the same time. We
Hmm.
sort of founded it ourselves. Took a while to find a drummer. Kind of tossed around the idea of having a second guitar player, second songwriter,
Hmm.
but it ultimately kind of centered on the 2 of us. And just recently, we've kind of been able to settle in with a new drummer. So
Nice.
getting the next album going. Yeah.
So so I was looking around the website and I was reading that I think the first album came out 2015. Is that right?
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
Okay, because I was a little confused because like when I was listening to you guys on Apple Music, and I think both the albums show up as 2017, but it must have been like like maybe it was uploaded a little bit later or something like that. I was like, damn,
Yeah.
these guys are prolific. 2 albums in 1 year.
Well, so that album was actually recorded 2015. Then we did the second album 2017, I want to say now. So that
Okay,
was
yeah.
like my right after. And then we were working on the third album, but then the drummer that we were working with ended up kind of moving out to California, so we
Mm.
kind of lost track of him a little bit, and we started working on the album. So the songs that we did have became the EP that we ultimately released. I think it was Seasons Past. So that might have been what you
Yeah.
were seeing on Apple Music as well.
Got it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the introduction that I had to your band was the Seasons Past EP. That was the first thing I
Yeah.
listened to, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's just 4 songs on there, and I
Yeah.
was like, I need to listen to a little bit more. And then I went onto your guys' profile on Apple Music, and I found all the other stuff, which is all really great. Like I really enjoyed the like the indie rock vibe that you guys have going on. So hopefully we get to hear a lot more going forward.
Yeah, we have the third album. I mean, again, John, he's the singer, songwriter, guitarist, singer. He's
Hmm.
pretty much the brains and heart of the operation. So he's got, I mean, we have probably 20 songs written for the next album. We're kind of getting those
Nice.
down in the practice, and then hopefully a little later this year get to recording.
That's really cool. Like, I'm wondering. I feel like this question is something that I wouldn't have asked a couple of years ago. But like, how did the pandemic affect the song, not the songwriting process, but more like the album making process? Because I think the EP came out 2021, right?
Yeah, we finally, yeah, those songs were bouncing around for a little while. I mean, John's like a very, very prolific songwriter. I mean, everything he's written for the band, I mean, he has, I don't even know, 5 or 6 solo albums at this point over the
Oh
last
wow.
8 years.
Hmm.
Yeah, so he writes a ton, and even with the songs that we're working on, there's still probably another 15 or 20 that we kind of said, okay, we'll hold off on these. Maybe we'll come back to them.
Hmm.
So there's, yeah, so a ton of songwriting. The songwriting never really stopped, never really was an issue. But yeah, as far as like the album was going, COVID pretty much stopped everything in its tracks. Between shows, between practices, finding a drummer, everything just, one shot.
Yeah, it kind of sucks how like there's like on the podcast I've interviewed so many people that it just kind of seemed like everyone was living their best life, and then COVID hit and it was like, okay, well, we got to
Yeah.
reevaluate everything we're doing now. But it's cool to see that you guys, bounce back. We had that EP out, and that the third album's on the way. Something that stood out to me, you were telling me the history of like how you guys started this band. You said this is not your first band. How many what was your journey in music up until this point?
So I started playing bass probably when I was about 14 or so.
Hmm.
At the time, I guess like Blink-182, Green Day were the big bands. Everyone
Oh
wanted
yeah.
to, be pop punk. So, we all started then. And, you started playing guitar. I got really into Nirvana for a while. And
Hmm.
then every band, 12 million guitar players, about 5 bass players. So,
Hmm.
so we started playing bass, and that's kind of what
Yeah.
stuck. Everyone needed a bass player. So if you were playing bass, you always had someone to play with, and some band to kind of work with.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so I had a band when I was 15. That really wasn't anything at all. And then probably when I was around 19 or 20, band was looking for a bass player. Kind of a friend of a friend got in touch with them, and they were called the Silver Wings. We did this kind of blues punk kind of thing.
Okay.
And we did that for a couple years, and then everyone kind of went their own way. The drummer we were working with, Chris, he kind of did more of an acting thing, and then the guitar player and the singer, Jeff, he had moved upstate for grad school to do music therapy. So everyone was
Ah.
kind of going their own ways. I stayed in
Uh-huh.
Queens and met John at one of the Silver Wing shows, and then we both had really similar influences. He was really into Elliott Smith. I had a lot of the same kind of leanings, and
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, it'd be cool to do a band around that."
Interesting. So like this is something that you've been, basically working with your whole adult life.
Yeah, yeah, for
So
sure.
like since 14 you knew and you chose to pursue music, which I think is pretty cool. Because I mean, there's a lot of people that kind of like have that inkling at 14, 15, but either someone else convinces them or they convince themselves like, maybe I should try something else, and then they come back around to the thing that they had in the back of their head ever since.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think I think it's always very daunting, especially like
Yeah.
because the bands we always listen to, the bands that always really move us are the ones a couple million fans at the time.
Hmm.
First exposure to music is usually popular music, so
Yeah.
you're looking at people not really as people, but more as deities, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And it's kinda like, how am I going to do that? I want to play. At the time, it was Warp Tour. I don't know if Warp Tour is still even going anymore,
Uh-huh.
but you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. And
Yeah.
then, now there's like Coachella and all that. There used to be the Reading Festival. You kind of watch all those things, Woodstock, and you're like, oh, I want to do that. But it's all the other steps that no one really tells you about that you need to start building that.
Oh, for sure. Like,
Yeah.
see, my background is more in like stand-up comedy, screenwriting type stuff. And like I kind of figured I wanted to do that from an early age. And like you said, you see these people not as people, but more like, either movie stars or rock stars, or like they're people on a screen or people on the radio to you. And then you're like, I can do that. And then you give it a shot and you're like, oh, this involves a ton of work.
There's a
Um,
lot more here. Yeah. 100%.
How was that
100%.
process for you? Because like for me, it was a huge wake up call, but at the same time, I was like, I like this so much that I want to do it, but I never imagined how much work goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing guitar probably around 14, and like you learn a couple chords and not even well, and you're like, yeah, I got everything I need to. I got everything I need to write a song,
Yeah.
and you sit down, you record it, and you listen back, and it sounds like crap. And you're like, okay, everything's off key. The production's not where it needs to be, putting it lightly. And it's a learning curve. Hopefully, you find people who can kind of take you under their wing and kind of give you a little bit of a clue.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of how I guess how it works, or you learn the hard way, like we did with those first bands.
Well, I feel like in a way, like it's weirdly motivating, like to like hit that brick wall and like know that you still want to do it despite learning how hard it is.
Yeah.
Like I've been going back to school for screenwriting, and something that one of our professors always tells us is just like, oh, this is a you chose a really difficult profession. Like, are you sure you want to do it? And half the class, at the end of the semester just kind of leaves, and the people that are left were just like, we know this is gonna be fucking hard, but like this is how we know that we really want to be here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was the thing too. Like I went through grad school. Well, it's been 2 or 3 years now. I got my master's in English, but
Hmm.
that was the way it was. We had a kind of like an affiliate MFA program in the same college, so everyone kind of overlapped a bit. And it was funny, like when I left school, I'm like, yeah, my original thing was English. I'm going to write. I'm going to do this. You leave school, and half the motivation's gone. You don't
Yeah.
have the same deadlines. You got a lot more leniency in terms of how you approach things, and
No.
hopefully, once you're outside the rigors of the program, it kind of sticks with you.
Yeah, I've mentioned this quite a few times on the podcast, so people might be bored of hearing this, but like I went to school for physics, and so like I'm right there with you. Like right after I was done, I was like, I don't want to do this. Like I really only did this for the grade and for I thought I wanted a degree and I thought I wanted to do this and that. But that kind of leads me into like one of the questions I had. Like one of the ways that you described yourself on that Reddit post was failed writer, and I just wanted to know what's the backstory there.
Well, I use failed pretty loosely. I mean, I think if we're not failing, you're not really learning in a
Of
sense.
course, yeah.
You need to fail along the way. And I tell the students I work with the same thing. Like if you fail a class, we just got to approach it differently. It means that approach didn't work. We learned something. We're going to move forward. And so with writing, through my undergrad, I did a lot of creative writing. We had like the literary journals, things like that, and I did journalism for a while. I interviewed some bands for a little while. I don't know if you've heard of Biffy Clyro, Scottish band.
I have not, but now I
Oh,
am gonna look them
gotcha.
up.
Yeah, they were pretty big in Europe, and they just never really broke in the United States
Mhm.
for whatever reason. Part of it's cultural, the thick Scottish accents. I'm not sure what it is, but their music was always pretty good.
Okay.
But yeah, I interviewed them for a while, so that was you kind of get like the little taste that you're like, this is awesome.
Mhm.
And just when you're actually kind of trying to make a career of it, you're like, yeah, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. The money's not there, and at a certain point, the labor of love, bills need to be paid, and you still work at it, you still do it, but um, the art's always there, and maybe there has to be a compromise for a job or for something like that. I think for me, that's partially what it was.
Oh, for sure. Like, not because you said you went all the way up to the graduate level. You did your master's. So
Yeah.
like this whole time that you're in college and you're doing your master's degree, you're doing from what you described, you've been doing music on the side or alongside that as well. How did you manage to do both of those things? Because I that's something I really struggled with when I was in college. Like, that academic side and then the artistic side.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm pretty like I have a perfectionist streak. I have OCD, so for me, I can't do anything less. I can't half-ass anything. I just can't.
Uh huh.
If I'm not putting everything into it and burning myself out, then it's almost like not worth doing to my mind. Is it healthy? No, it's definitely not healthy. But
Uh huh.
it's led to some pretty cool things. I mean, keeping music and education separate, they weren't too bad. I'd always set my schedule so that I had plenty of time to get stuff done. And honestly, I tell my students the same thing at the college I work at now. 99% of it's time management. If you got the time management down, from there, everything else is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and you've mentioned a few times now that you have students. Like, are you a professor, or in what capacity do you work at the school?
So I started with tutoring. That was like 2015, I want to say.
Uh huh.
And I've been doing academic advising for the last, well, 6 years now. So it's been a while.
Okay.
So I basically help keep students on track, get them through their degrees, on to the next thing,
Kind
whatever that might be.
kind of like a counselor type thing. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
that's really interesting. Like, how does that I mean, you already said like you just put everything in, all you have into all the projects you're doing. Um, how does your like life background inform how you approach these students? Because I'm guessing you kind of give them a really well-rounded answer to a lot of the questions they might have.
Yeah, that's the goal. I earn these bags under my eyes, like, it doesn't come naturally. So I think for them, it's like I try to get them to do the same thing. Some of these kids are 18, 19. They're really just kind of getting their feet under them, and they're coming from high school, especially the last 2 years with COVID.
Hmm.
It's kind of an unusual high school experience.
Yeah.
So kind of just getting them into that kind of rhythm of college, and it takes time. It does. And for a while, I was advising for like arts, music, dance, film, theater students. So
Hmm.
I can kind of tell them like, hey, no telling how this is going to go. You could end up being, Emmy, Grammy, whatever, but
Yeah.
or you could also end up teaching and doing this on the side. But just because it's a passion doesn't mean you have to really compromise or give it up at any point. It's work, but you know,
Yeah, and I feel like, as tough as that might be to hear sometimes, I feel like we definitely need that as like creative people, is to know the truth. Like I feel like there's something to be said about a healthy amount of just like blind optimism, and that means like
yeah,
you go into it like giving it your all, but at the same time, we do live in the real world where you might have to have like a side gig to pay for bills and this and that, but there's nothing wrong with it. And I would have benefited a lot from having someone like you as an academic advisor through college. So I'm glad that you're giving that experience to a lot of other kids.
yeah. No, it's practice. I think optimism, again, to a certain point, is good. I wish I had more of that kind of blonde, blind optimism. But yeah, I think especially these days, any kind of optimism you have,
Hmm.
if you come across the wrong people on the internet, they can shake you of that pretty quickly. I think for me, 14, 15, putting music out there that really had no business being out there, you kind of hear that pretty quickly. And
Hmm.
I guess that's one of the nice things about the internet, but also one of the, the the tough things.
So when you were 14, 15, you were putting these things online, or were you like,
Well, so I was part of there was an old Nirvana message board that was like
oh
the place
shit,
for Nirvana fans, right? Like everyone was sharing bootlegs, and like, hey, check out this music. There was a guy there when I was 15. He gave me Elliott Smith's Either Or, Nick Drake's Pink Moon, and Neil Young's Harvest Moon.
nice.
I think it was Harvest Moon. And so that kind of just changed a lot because it was really only listening to Nirvana and all the Kurt Cobain approved bands at that point,
Uh-huh.
the Pixies and the Melvins and all that. So it
Hmm.
kind of opened everything up and really, really kind of changed it. So it was kind of a formative message board, I guess, as formative as a message board could be. But there are definitely some musicians who were a bit more, I guess, advanced. They were a little older, and so for me and some of the other younger guys, they would definitely talk a little bit of shit. But what are you gonna do?
Well, oh, okay. So like that's kind of what I was going to get into, because like even like, now as an adult, if I like show a script that I wrote to someone, or I go on stage, it still kind of stings a little bit if someone like doesn't laugh at a joke, or someone tells me like your script is kind of ass like right here, or it's still like, because it's like it comes from a place of passion. Like all these things are passion projects, and like I feel like I've grown to learn how to like compartmentalize those things and be like, okay, this isn't personal, they're just commenting on objectively. But at 14, did you have that, or did you just you got thrown in the deep end?
Pretty much a deep end thing. Yeah, I think it always shakes your confidence a bit. I don't think whether you're
Yeah.
14 or 30. I've been doing this long enough, and you're always going to kind of get. I think the easiest thing to do is to criticize art, to
Hmm.
criticize anything really. But I think there's a big difference between criticizing and then being more constructive with it. So for me, if there's something, again, like I've done plenty of like writing workshops in school, or just kind of working on songs with people. Being able to kind of accept criticism and understand that
Yeah.
it's not always coming from a personal place. Sometimes it can. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely things that you think like, that didn't exactly go how I wanted, and art. Whether I think even comedy can be a very personal thing.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
I feel like any type of, I feel like any type of art, anything that's like coming from your imagination, anything that's coming from like, you're alone in your room writing a song, or like writing a riff to something, or writing a script, whatever it is, like it's coming from you and only you. And so when someone criticizes it, it almost feels like like, making fun of an extension of you, like, saying, you have a huge nose or you look ugly, like whatever. Like it feels like a part of yourself. At least that's how it feels with the stuff that I create.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I think anything you create, there's always a part of you because no one
Yeah.
else can create it in that same way. Even if the song I write's total crap, no one else is going to write that crap song. Partially because it's crap and there's probably something, you know, structurally wrong with it. But secondly, no one's going to have that same kind of worldview in this time and place that we have.
Yeah, no, that's something that honestly keeps me motivated, is like when I'm stuck and be like, how am I going to write like an original screenplay, an original joke, and be like, well, it's like I am the only one that's lived my life, so I could probably write
Yeah.
something, very unique to me. Um, I was wondering, like you said, you went to school for English, for your undergrad and grad school.
Yeah.
Uh, was there a reason that you didn't go into something related to music?
Well, I think for me, I was self taught with pretty much everything, guitar, bass, and all that. So at the time when I was looking to music programs, they wanted you to have a much more, a much more, I guess, higher level of theory and better grounding in it, which I just didn't have.
Hmm.
And growing up, we were kind of like middle class, but there wasn't exactly like disposable income for hey, go do a year of intensive lessons before college.
Got it.
Um, and then, to be honest with you, part of it was just that kind of punk thing. We don't need theory. You know, only theory.
Hell yeah.
We'll learn by ear. We'll learn by ear. We got this.
Hmm.
Um, Now it's different. Now the college I work at, they do accept students with no musical background, so they kind of give everybody a chance. We're upfront with them. We tell them, hey, it's going to be a lot of work. It's like learning a language. There's a lot of work that's going to go into this. But if this is something you're committed to and something you want to do, we'll make it happen. Um,
Got it.
so
Okay, so it wasn't that it wasn't even a possibility. It's just it wasn't like you considered it, but it wasn't possible at the time.
yeah, give at everything at the moment, it's just between kind of the anxieties and stuff personally, the cost requirement that would be needed to get up to that kind of level that I needed for it, and then
Yeah.
just the requirements of the colleges at the time. Yeah, it just didn't add up.
It is actually pretty insane, like how much education costs, and especially like for something in the arts. A lot of times you have to go to like a private college or a private this or private that, and it's
Yeah,
just like I'm going into a career where it's not guaranteed. Like if I go into engineering, more than likely there's going to be something for me down the road. But if I go somewhere in the arts, first of all, it's like a high cost of entry, and then on top of that, there's like you could make this money back or maybe you don't, and it's
or
a,
you go
it's
down
just
in flames, one way or the other.
and it's a huge gamble, but like it's that being said, um people are really brave to do that and to go into that and say like I'm gonna hit the ground running and do the best I can.
Yeah, I mean, with something like physics, I mean, so you said that's what you were studying before,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, you can almost punch your ticket into anything related, especially like the STEM teachers now. There's a big need for that. But
bro.
if it's just not where your passion is, that's just you
No,
know.
like I was a middle school teacher for a year after college, and I was like I tried that whole lifestyle, and hats off to all the teachers. It's just not my thing. And like being a teacher, I realized how much I like underestimated teachers growing up, like the amount of work that goes into it. And to be a good teacher, you have to love teaching. And I felt like after like I did the whole school year, I didn't want to like leave the kids halfway through. And then after that, I was like, it's honestly a disservice for me to still be here if it's not my passion. Like these kids need to learn from someone that like is really, really, really into this. And so I tried that. And then when I decided to, quit my job, do stand up for a year, like what you're saying, physics kind of had something guaranteed for me. And then my parents were just like, "What are you doing? Like you have it, like you have it made." I was like,
Yeah,
"But make a good amount of money and I could live that life, but I don't think it'll make me happy." And it's a really tough decision to make, but I feel like overall, like I've really enjoyed making that decision and going that route. And I really encourage anyone, if it's possible for you to do, to try to do that route, at least for a while, to say that you did it.
but yeah, for sure, you want to say you gave it a shot. The last thing you want to do is have a regret. I mean, it's definitely plenty of people. I mean, can think of there's a UK comedian, Jimmy Carr. No,
Yeah,
Jimmy Carr. Yeah, Jimmy Carr.
Jimmy Carr.
I think he was trading stocks for a while, and he just left business, went into stand up comedy, and now everyone knows him for
Yeah.
his laugh. He's that really exaggerated.
He looks like, yeah, he looks
You
like,
know,
what are they called? Like are they the marionettes or like, I don't know. He has like a really exaggerated like smile. He's
yeah,
really funny. But I feel you, dude. Like, there are many examples of that, and I mean, at the end of the day, anything is possible. Like, I think one of the was it the guitarist from Queen was in like he had his astrophysics degree,
he
and
went
like
back to after. Yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that. I'm just like, okay, I can do it. If like he had his degree and decided to switch careers. It doesn't mean I'm gonna be Queen level status, but like I can at least be happy doing what I want to do.
But fingers crossed. All the
Fingers
same.
crossed. Fingers crossed.
I mean, I think it was the guy in The Offspring too. He has his PhD in something or other. I
Oh
forget what
shit,
it
I didn't
was,
know
but
that.
yeah,
That's pretty cool.
doctor. He's a doctor now. So
Yeah, and I feel like growing up, you look at these people and be like, "This is all they did. They poured their life into this." But like, there's something to be said about living a different life for a bit, and then you come back to the arts, and it gives you a whole
yeah,
nother experience.
yeah. And I think a lot of what I do, even as a job, when these kids come in 18, 19, I'm like, oh, what do you want to do? They'll tell me like, oh, I want to do computer science. I'm like, why? Oh, my parents told me to pay a lot of money. I want to do business. Why? My parents told me to pay a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of the conversation is getting down to, well, what do you want to do? What interests you?
Hmm.
And, for students of certain backgrounds, there's definitely a battle in there to kind of not agree with their parents and what their parents are suggesting,
Hmm.
which for them is scary as hell, which is understandable.
Dude, God bless you for talking to those kids, man. I feel like I said, I would have loved to have you as an academic advisor back then. And I feel like for a lot of kids, myself included, it was like my parents knew nothing more than, you get an engineering degree and that brings you out of poverty. Like for them, going to school was a thing that like propelled them into the middle class.
Right.
And for their kid to tell them, yeah, I want to do something in the arts, is like they feel like, oh, we work so hard to come out of there and we feel like you might go back in. And there's a fear from the parents too, and that kind of like trickles down into like some sort of anxiety for the kids. Um,
Yeah.
at this point, I'm talking about just myself, but I feel like a lot of other people might might
No, for
might be in
sure.
the
I
same
think it's
boat.
definitely, yeah, no, it definitely, kind of carries over to a lot of people. There's a lot of anxiety with with that kind of thing. But I think part of it too is that, to have that choice is still a position of privilege. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So, my parents wouldn't have had that option, to
correct.
say like, hey, I'm going to leave school and do this. If
Yep.
they didn't even go to school, they didn't have the option. My dad wanted to be a history teacher and his father told him, no, you got to go to work. There's no funds for that. Um, so I think one thing for me, I went through a lot of the public universities in New York, and most of those were a fraction of the cost of private schools. I was actually going to go to a private school originally, and it was $25,000 a semester. And
Hmm.
last minute, I said, "Oh hell no!" And I switched over to a community college, and where I was paying 1,800 a semester,
Yeah.
and I don't regret that at all. I'm at community college at the time. The classes were a lot smaller. The professors, were teaching there, and they gave a crap,
Yeah.
and it really kind of kept me engaged through a lot of that. Whereas if I went to that more expensive school, I'm sitting in a lecture hall, 200 other people.
I'm a huge advocate for community college. Like now that I'm going to school again, I'm in community for the second time. Like the first time
Yeah,
around, like you said, saved a ton of money. And this time, you if you're, especially if you're just trying to figure out what you want to do, it's the best place to do it. You can take whatever class you want. And I didn't know that going in. Like I feel like a lot of times community college was like, oh, really? You're gonna do that? Like,
it still
what?
is.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
but there's nothing wrong with it. Like, why am I gonna spend 20 grand a year trying to figure out what I want to do,
yeah,
versus 1, 2 grand a year, figuring out what I want to do, but it's a lot more worth the money.
yeah. And people used to tell it. We used to tell our kids like, hey, if there's a place to spend your to spend money for your masters, do it then. Don't do it for the bachelors, the associates, things like that.
Hmm.
But even then, now I tell kids, hey, find a job where they'll pay for your masters. Save yourself
Yeah.
that extra 10 grand because that's where financial aid, you're not going to get any of that. Um, it's a whole process, but
Well, we kind of we
yeah,
I love that we're talking about all this, and it's honestly like super interesting to me, and like I want to tie it back in a way back to the music. And when I was a teacher, it was my biggest fear for my students to find my stand up sets. And now I wonder, for you as an academic advisor, like, do you openly tell your students or the people that you advise, like, this is what I do on the side, or have you had people find out about
uh,
your music?
I think when it's appropriate, I'm not going to go around like telling my students, "Hey, check out my band. I need the plays. Come to these shows." No, it's not like that. But I'll tell them like, "Hey, I understand what you're going through. It is kind of like a lifestyle change to change your major or to have to get a job, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily sacrificing your dreams because I work full time and I still play music, and we don't really get too much more beyond that. I've had one or two kids kind of like find it and bring it up like, hey, it's music sounds pretty cool. Thankfully, it's positive for the most part,
Yeah.
but and some of my coworkers have listened to some of this stuff, but it's funny because it's one of those things when you're in your 20s, you're like, I'm in a band, like, oh, it's really cool.
Yeah.
But now I just hit 30, and they're kind of like, oh, you're in a band, like, like no, that's what I do,
Dude, I'm getting there, dude. I'm turning 28 this year, and my wife is a little younger than I am, and she just, she keeps telling me like, you're getting closer to 30. I was like, I know, like, and like you said, exactly what you said, like in your early 20s, you're just like, yeah, I quit my job to do stand up, and like it's like, oh, cool, nice, like taking risks. But the older you get, even our peers, our parents are just like, really, like, do you really want to quit your job to do that? But
Where's your 401k? Where's your IRA? Where's
exactly. But it is what it is. Like, I know of comedians that like started when they were 30 and it took them 10 years. They didn't really pop off until they were like 45. Like I don't know if you know who Bill Burr is, but he's like
Yeah, of course.
someone that I look up to like professionally. Like he's always said like it doesn't really matter when you start out, as long as like you hit the ground running and you do the work, you'll get there.
Yeah. And I mean,
Um
it's a process. Yeah. I mean, it's a scary process, but I think the other thing too is as
Absolutely.
long as you're enjoying what you're doing, it makes it, regardless of the outcome, it makes it enjoyable.
Absolutely, dude. I agree. So you were mentioning that you split your time between academic advising and music. Right now, you did mention at the top of the interview that you guys are working on the third album, or is it something that's already put together and it's in the process of releasing?
No, it's definitely not done yet. It's not even close. So John does most of the songwriting. He brings a lot of the songs in, and then we kind of almost like workshop them in the rehearsal spaces. And we kind of, we usually record the practices. We'll listen back and say, "Oh, this sounds cool. Let's keep this part." We kind of do a lot of editing.
Hmm.
There was a point where John was kind of bringing the songs in fully formed, but I think this time around we have a lot of some of them are, some of them still are, and then some of them are bits and pieces. We kind of just kind of build on from there,
Yeah.
and so yeah, we didn't have a drummer for a few years. COVID kind of ensured that for us, and then we recently got in touch with a new drummer. We've been working with him for it's been a couple months. He's
Hmm.
we all have day jobs, and that's the part that slows us down a little bit. I'm doing the
Yeah.
advising thing. John's a lawyer. Um, our drummer Rob, he's a registered nurse, so we're all kind
Oh
of
shit.
balancing some crazy schedules. Yeah,
Damn.
John just got married, so it's kind of like that combination of art and adulting now, and we'll see how it
Yeah.
goes.
And I mean, as like as adult, as 30-year-old as all this sounds like, it's actually pretty punk to like have this whole second life, and like everyone kind of like makes that sliver of time where you can do like band practice and writing and all those things
Yeah,
to get the album going.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think the songs are definitely they're coming together. We've been kind of working on them the last couple months, kind of here and there when we can, kind of like a guerrilla practice kind of deal.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's mostly coming together. I think we've whittled it down from about 30 different things to around the goal will be about 15 or 16 songs that we feel are pretty solid.
Nice.
And yeah, it's definitely kind of a little bit of a shift stylistically. We're interested a little bit more in kind of some of the sounds, and I don't want to say ambience. It's still indie rock at the end of the day, but there's definitely a little bit more noise in there.
Yeah, like that's something that I noticed from, I believe you guys have an early EP, and then you guys have the two albums, and then the most recent EP.
Yeah,
I listened to the most recent one first, and then I went back in just chronological order and just kind of like heard the change in sound for the band, and it made me excited to see like what was next, because I feel like this EP specifically was a slight change in sound, but
yeah,
kind of like leaving like inklings of just like where you guys are going in the next album.
yeah. I think with the first album, so John was doing a lot more kind of like singer songwriter, Elliott Smith kind of folk stuff, and so when we started the band, I think a lot of the songs were coming from a lot of '90s influences, Pavement, Nirvana,
Yeah.
um, you know, everything of Built to Spill was another big one for him at the time. And so we kind of tried to really kind of key in on some of that. And then the second album, we started working with like a string quartet. We brought them in for a couple songs, and instead of recording, in my basement, we John had one of his friend Joe Totino, who does a lot of production work. He works at some really big studios. So we
Mhm.
recorded with him and got a lot, better sound quality also, but just a bit more ambitious with the production.
All this being said, like I'm really excited where the next album is gonna go, and something that I'm curious about. Like I looked on your website, and I know you guys have done like shows in the on the East Coast. Um, when like are you? I live on the West Coast.
Yeah,
And just a question, just for me, when are you guys coming over here so we can so I can go see you guys live?
hang out, have a drink or two. Yeah, everything in moderation. Yeah, I mean that's definitely the hope. We never really got a chance to do much touring. I think when we were getting the band going, we started looking into it, and then you know people started going to school. Things kind of broke down with COVID. So yeah, I never really got to tour. So definitely something I would like to do. I'll have to save up my vacation days from work, like a proper adult, and take a couple
Or I mean,
weeks.
I could just go out there and see you guys, but like it
Mm,
definitely be cool
that too.
for you guys to see like other venues. Like
Yeah.
you guys have done shows on the East Coast, is that right?
Yeah, with Cloud Tapes, we did a couple. There's well, I don't know how many of these venues are still open, but there was like the Delancey, Grand Victory. Most of those were in Brooklyn.
Hmm.
We had a shift. There's not really many places to play in Queens. There was a couple bars, things like that, small places. There was a shift to the city for a little while, some usually on the Lower East Side, and then now everything kind of shifted over into Brooklyn.
Got
So we
it.
kind of have all these different, these kind of migrations. We follow the hipsters. We follow the hipsters. Um,
I
Follow
like
the
the
hipsters, and
transparency.
that's and that's where the venues open. So find the hipsters, and you'll kind of stay relevant. Um, yeah, I mean, in some ways, it almost felt like with the first band I was with, the Silver Wings, we kind of missed the boat because early 2000s, you have like the White Stripes and those bands kind of bringing back that kind of blues sound.
Hmm.
Then when Silver Wings were going, we kind of didn't really have that sound anymore. It was a lot of like post hardcore and stuff like that where we did not fit in on any of those bills. I don't know what the hell these people were thinking. Like, yeah, you can play with this band. You're good. We'll work you into the lineup, and we really had no business being there. It
Oh
just didn't
boy.
make sense. Yeah. So we had a couple like that, and then with Cloud Tapes, I think it's a similar thing. There's a lot of places we used to play. They'd kind of just put the bands on bills, and you'd have a pop punk band, you'd have a metal band, you'd have us, and it's kind of like, well, what are you getting next? We don't really know.
Yeah.
So
Like I've had that experience too with like stand up where I think one time I got hired just because I have a Hispanic last name, and I got put on a Latino showcase, and none of my jokes at the time had anything to do with like, my culture, my race, and everyone else seemed to like understand the assignment, and they were like talking about all that stuff. And now here I am like a couple years into comedy being like, what the fuck am I gonna say? Like it's a really weird feeling to like see all those people go up before you and be like, I don't fit in, but I'm here and I'm gonna do it.
yeah, I mean, how do you do crowd wise with comedy?
I well, you're talking about like crowd work and stuff like that, or like
Well, even
how?
just like do you guys pack shows? Do I know for bands, we do not pack shows.
So it's that's actually interesting. Like I'm curious to know how that works for you guys, because like for stand-up comedians, like when you're first starting out, we do a thing called bringer shows, and they'll only let you on if you bring a certain amount of people. And so you'll be quote
Yeah,
unquote hired, and they'll be like, okay, so you get to do 5 minutes if you bring 10 people. If you bring 20, we'll let you do seven. And if you show up with three, they'll be like, tough luck, you're not going on, but thank you for these three people. And
yeah,
that's kind of how it is. And so it kind of does get packed, but it's just a bunch of friends of friends of friends that are there.
yeah.
How is it for the
Well,
music
I think
venues?
Yeah, I think for music for the longest time it was the same thing. I always called it pay to play. You got to
There you go.
bring
Yeah.
sell 15 tickets, or you're not playing, or you get bumped off the bill, things like that. So for the people who had a million friends, no problem. For me, I had my little social circle of like two or three people. It was not, didn't go so well. And so we did a couple of those, but at a certain point, we were out money basically selling
Hmm.
tickets to friends. Then there was like a drink limit, all that kind of stuff. And then they'd say, oh, the show didn't make enough money, so hey, we can give you a bottle of water,
Oh, bro, that
or
sucks.
or oh, we actually had one time where the promoter took all the money and ran.
Oh shit.
So we're like, was like, so I was like, I'm really sorry. I was like, well, it's not your fault, but what the fuck?
What was
you
it?
know?
Was it like a type of show that you guys were promised a certain amount of like percentage of like
No,
Oh,
no, we
okay.
don't get. I think there was one show we had where we got like a percentage of the bar, and it was nothing. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I've also been through all those, and I feel like I'm still going through it in a lot of ways, but um it definitely sucks in the moment, but you kind of look back sometimes and be like, okay, well, I kind of learned what to look out for. What are the red flags of a venue, like of a promoter or like whoever's putting the show together,
Yeah,
and not I'm not going to repeat that again.
yeah, no, 100%. I think we did two of those shows. The first time we got roped in because we were opening for a pop punk band at the time. There was Alistair. They were big and they had one or two hits in the
Uh
'90s, and
huh.
then not much. But so we opened for them, and then we were like, oh, this is really cool. We'll play the show. We're open for this band. This will be our big break, you know. And I think they might have they came in for one song, and then they were back in their van because they were on tour, which I get. You know, it's probably a bummer to have to go city to city, listen to music, and
Yeah.
then then play. We did one of those. We did a couple, and we did one or two in the city, and then after that, they're like, oh, we should do more of these. I'm like, no, no. I was like, we're playing these shows and we're out, we're out $200,
Yeah.
either covering tickets that people didn't buy or, otherwise we don't play. We're lugging our gear. There's no back line, like, all our amps and all that stuff. We have to get there, bring all this stuff back and forth. And at a certain point, like, you're playing for the other band's girlfriends,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's kind of like, it just got to a point where I'm like, yeah, this isn't doing anything for us. Yeah.
What was the last show that you played before? Well, I'm guessing before the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, before that, I guess it was this was a couple of years ago now. I guess it was probably like November 2019, I want to say. It might have even been 2018 because the
And did
drummer we had moved out. Yeah.
Did it ever get to the point where, like, you guys were bringing in people organically, or was, like, up until that point, it was still friends of friends of friends?
Mostly it was friends of friends of friends. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard to, like, to break out of that,
Yeah.
and but even then, like, just going on stage and being able to perform the stuff that you wrote, like, with your buddies and, stuff that only you guys have listened to, even if it's friends of friends of friends, or even if there's, the other band and brought people.
Yeah.
I can imagine that despite all the negativity that we're talking about, like there's something to be said about being on stage and being able to perform those.
Yeah, 100%. I think again for me, playing live was the most fun part of being in the band. Hearing the recordings all come together in the studio was always awesome. But playing live, you get the energy, the lights, even just the volume of the music.
Yeah.
Wear earplugs, please. Uh, with the band now, I'm like, guys, you gotta wear earplugs. Like, no, it sounds better without it. I'm like, yeah, but when you're, a couple years down the line, you get tinnitus. You're not going to be saying that. So those, some of the practice rooms we were in, they're louder than a jet engine. So I'm like, guys, please just wear these damn earplugs. I'll get them for you. Just wear them. You
Do
know, yeah.
do you have tinnitus?
No,
Oh,
no,
bro. Wear your
I don't want to.
earplugs. Anyone that's
I
listening to
do.
this, wear your earplugs
Please.
because
I
I recently got tinnitus like this year, and it sucks. And if I would have known like how sensitive ears are, I would have been wearing earplugs to every fucking concert. Because like I've never been on stage playing music, but I like going to like punk shows and being
yeah,
all the way to the front, and like you're right next to the speakers,
that's
and
not good.
like you see the people on stage and they have earplugs, and you're like, That's probably because they do this every night or whatever. Like I'm gonna enjoy the show. Like even as an audience member, like go put your earplugs in. You can still hear it, and you'll still enjoy everything
You gotta get
perfectly
the right
fine.
kind. Yeah, you
Yeah.
just gotta get the right kind. I like the skull screws. They almost work like filters. They take off the really loud volume, but you
Yeah.
still hear everything. Um, and
Well,
yeah, I did it once with no earplugs in a practice. My ears rang for about 2 days. I'm like, okay, no, no, no. I don't care how punk it is to to go without earplugs. No, same thing with screaming. You scream improperly, you're gonna lose your voice. There's nothing punk about not having a voice.
yeah,
You know,
dude,
so,
I'm glad we're talking about like the real life of being a musician because
these are the realities. These are the
yeah,
realities.
100%, dude. Because like I when I went to go get my ears checked, they're just like, are you in a band? I was like, no. Do you shoot guns for a living? No. Do you go to a lot of concerts? I was like, yeah. They're like, there it is. That's why.
There you go.
There you go. And now I have to wear hearing aids. So honestly, people, if you're listening to this, please
Oh,
wear
got that bad. Holy crap! Yeah.
dude, honestly, okay, honestly, it's not that bad, but the way they explained it to me, they're like, it's kind of like wearing glasses. If you don't wear them, it just gets worse. and so I
Yeah.
just kind of have to wear them all the time. This
Damn.
got really depressing real quick. We're almost 30 here and just talking about how my body is failing me, but
But I just told a friend,
honestly,
don't worry, you're gonna turn 30, you're gonna wake up, new creak in your shoulder, a little pain in your hip, and it's just downhill from there.
you got to convince your bandmates to wear their hearing aids.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's just not it's not worth it.
Do you guys have any plans on doing any shows after the new album's out?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really just a matter of hopefully getting the world back to normal, or at least a semblance of it.
Yeah.
We kind of survey the scene, see what venues are still standing, and my hope is that some of the venues that we're doing that kind of pay to play thing, they kind of change their ways a little bit. We never really had too many. There was a place called Shillelagh Tavern over in Astoria, New York, where they used to just book bands and have like an open mic night. Everyone would just come over, hang out, listen to each other play, and it's kind of like a little supportive scene we had.
Hmm.
And then there was another kind of project called Taking Back Queens that one of the guys had founded, Parker, and he passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately. But he gave us a place to play, he gave us a stage, he gave us a voice, and usually pizza too. So
Yeah.
so those were the fun days. You don't realize it looking back. You're like, man, this we're trying to just get out there, but those are the fun days.
Yeah, like I had a similar experience where one of the first places that hired me and that didn't really care about how many people I brought, in
Yeah,
terms of stage time, is a place in Pasadena where like a lot of famous comedians had kind of started, and I was like really hyped to be there. And the only thing they said is like, if you bring more people, we'll pay you like actual money, like which is
actual money.
I'd
Whoa.
never gotten before. And
Yeah,
the guy, like, he was like, if you bring in 10 people, I'll give you $20, and that's the most money I've ever made from doing stand up, was that. And he, like, if I ever showed up with no one, he would still give me my 10 minutes. I wouldn't get paid, but he never penalized me in terms of, you don't get to go on stage now. And it always felt like he was like the shining light in like LA, that he gave people the stage. And he recently passed away as well. And like, it's like, looking back, like exactly like you said, I didn't realize those were like really good times where you kind of like make those friends in the scene.
yeah. Well, especially if the Parker, he always listened to the bands. He's always really supportive. He'd try to always build bills that made sense, right? You weren't going
Hmm.
to put the acoustic band with the post-hardcore death metal band. Like,
Yeah.
he really was always very deliberate with how he put things together, and he had a vision. And yeah, he's a good dude for a lot of us. He gave us a lot. He gave us a space. He gave us kind of like a little bit of a voice. So yeah,
Well, dude, I've really enjoyed our conversation, and it's kind of like reaching the end of the hour here. I feel like you're one of the people that have been on the podcast. I feel like you've lived 10 different lives, and I feel like you can speak an hour of each one of those. The way that we always end the show is, I always ask the guest if they could, go back in time and give themselves any like nugget of advice. Like, what would it be? Keeping in mind that there might be someone listening that would really take that to heart.
yeah. Well, I think for me, it's always an anxious person. It's just something I've always kind of had from a young age. So I think for me, it's just a lot of, I try to tell myself, don't take it too seriously. And again, that's very, very cliche, but it's something that I've, kind of had to remind myself over and over again, whether it's work stuff, staying up till 2 a.m, thinking like, oh, I gotta get this done. Um, you know, there's always, it's always going to be, so it's going to work out. It's going to work out one way or the other. It's going to work out.
Hell yeah. I knew you were going to deliver with the advice, being an academic advisor. Hell yeah.
Right. That's
Well,
it. Take your time, do the best you can. And as long as you do the best you can, you can't have any regrets.
well, Sal, it's been an honor having you on. I'm so glad we got
Appreciate
to
it.
talk, share some life experience, and hit me up when that next album's out. I'll let everyone
Sounds
know.
good. We following you as well. Take care.
All right, buddy. See ya.